We're excited to have a conversation with Sabrina Sol tonight.
Sabrina, if you don't mind, to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing?
Sure. So I've always wanted to be I always wanted to be an author. I was writing, little short stories, back in junior high, high school.
Mhm.
And I always had this dream of being a published author, but I just wasn't really sure about what I wanted to write. I had lots of different stories in my head. And probably I consider it, my midlife crisis. I was about to turn 40 and I was like, whatever happened to that dream? So I reached out to a friend that I had stayed in contact with from college, and she was a romance author. And so I just reached out to her and, not so much to be a romance author, but just like, I want to be an author. What do you suggest I do? And
Yeah.
so right away, she gave me all kinds of information. And the biggest one was to join a local romance writers group. And so I did. And it was like I had found my people, all these women who were writing these wonderful romance stories. And I had always also been a romance reader.
Okay.
My mom was a big romance reader. She had the shelves and walls full of Harlequin romance. And so I was reading those at a very young age. Um, but once I started to go to this romance authors group, and I was just going to learn the craft because I had no idea what it meant to write a
Yeah.
book. And
Mhm.
so I just decided, this is something I love reading romance. Why don't I try writing romance? And that same friend, she had let me know that her publisher was looking for submissions for a
Awesome.
series, an ongoing series. So the world was already built. You just had to follow like these certain rules. And luckily, they accepted my story, and that's how I got published. And that was back in I think 2012. So
Cool.
that's how I started my romance writing career. And I have, let's see, five, I believe, full length romance novels, along with some shorts and novellas. I've been in a couple of different anthologies. And then last year, I actually um, published my first women's fiction novel
Mhm.
under a different name. So that was exciting as well.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely going to get into your second personality, but I'd love to go back and talk a little bit about how you went from like the experience of writing in someone else's world for your first book and that first anthology to then feeling ready and to with your own stories to be able to share your own stories.
Yeah, so I think that was a really good door to walk through when you're first, starting out, because
Yeah.
because the world is already built, and it's just your imagination on how to take those specifics and create your own story within that world. And it was a short story. So again, that was a little bit easier for my first time being published. I didn't have to write this big old
Mhm.
long, 80,000 novel. And I think for this was with a smaller indie publisher. So I didn't have to have an agent. So that
Okay.
again was another bonus. And so I think it just kind of worked out really well. That was my first novel or release. Um, and then I wrote a couple more short stories after that with different publishers, but I really did want to start. I had this other story in my head, and
Mhm.
the opportunity came up to pitch it to a bigger publisher who also didn't accept. You didn't need an agent to pitch to them, and I was lucky enough that I had finished the manuscript. I sent it in, and I was accepted, and actually got like a 3-book contract. And that was the
Awesome.
first time I had ever gotten a contract without even having books ready, except for the first one.
Oh
So
my
that
gosh,
was
it's so nerve-wracking.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a whole other experience. Um, and so yeah, so I just been kind of, experimenting and exploring, not trying to, you know, put myself in a box.
Mhm.
you know, and go be open to working with different publishers and in different, with different tropes. So Second Chance at Rancho Lindo is my first cowboy romance. Never written
Mhm.
cowboys before, so that was really fun. Small town,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. So doing something completely different than anything else you've done before, were you nervous about that, or were you really like leaning into the challenge?
I think both. I
Mhm.
was very excited by the challenge of, well, I had to create this small town.
Sure.
So that was fun. And still a contemporary romance, but I still needed to do a lot of research into, um, you know, the ranch life. I'm a city girl, so that was something new that I had to look into and research um but at the core, I think of all my stories is family and food and going after your dreams. So in a
Mhm.
way, it still is, you know, it goes with all my other books. It's just a different setting.
Sure. Well, and being a city girl and writing about small towns in the country and rural areas, what sort of research did you get to do for that?
So the Second Chance Rancho Lindo is based in a fictional town in the Santa Ynez Valley up in
Mhm.
Central California. So I did have the opportunity to go visit twice while I was writing.
Cool.
And we went up to Santa Ynez. I went up with a couple of author friends, and we rented a little house, and you know, we got to explore the small town there. And um, it was funny because we got there and the house was, the decor was all cowboy. So it
Oh,
was
yeah.
like perfect inspiration, you know, for me to finish this book. And I also just mainly wanted to just to see all the, there's lots of family ranches up there.
Mhm.
And this was during the time of COVID. So ranches that normally where you could come and visit and hang out, they were not offering that. So all I could do was, you know, okay, let's go visit this ranch, and we just like drive by. So a
Drive
lot
by
of
it.
my
Yeah.
research about the ranches was done online. And so I did find one family ranch, a legacy ranch, and I tried to, so that was the inspiration for Rancho
Mhm.
Lindo.
That's cool. Well, and I love that you describe yourself as a chica who loves love. And then you've also got you're writing sexy, compelling Latinas and Latinos in these books. And I think that it's, I hate to say it's like something that we don't always see because there are more and more Latinx writers coming out. But I think that this is a type of farm and a type of ranch that we don't normally get to see as like the background of a romance. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like how exciting and how cool it is to get to show readers this whole other world and give them a new perspective.
Well, yeah, it was definitely exciting, and I was really, I guess, honored that, you know, the publisher wanted this type of story to feature,
Mhm.
a Mexican American family who own and work on their family's ranch, who's been there for decades, and to show, um, it's the cowboy romances. You know, there's different things that each cowboy romance has, but I think
Mhm.
um, what makes a story obviously is the characters' backgrounds and the work that they're doing. And so for me, it was really important for me to show not just the fact that they were ranchers, but
Mhm.
that they were Mexican American ranchers. So that means the food that they eat might be a little bit different. um their family dynamics might be a little bit different. There's 3 generations living on the ranch.
Mhm.
And so the grandmother is a big um, secondary character. And also, I think, in Mexican American families, there's this tendency for, the men to have this, well, everything's okay. We don't talk about our
Mhm.
feelings.
Yeah,
And
the
so
machismo.
the machismo. And so that was interesting to explore for this character, for Gabe, who his whole life was taught not to show his emotion. And then
Mhm.
he meets Nora, who's all about showing her emotion. And so how they, work that out together. And another thing, the cover is actually my first custom cover shoot. So the
Oh,
publisher actually did a photo shoot for the cover instead of picking stock photos. And they wanted to make sure that the model was Mexican American. And so he is.
that's
And
incredible.
so I thought that was in that by itself, I thought was such a great way to portray what was inside the book.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. It's such great representation. And because it's also the kickoff of a series, there's so much opportunity for future books to also feature Mexican American men and women on the cover. So that's great.
Yes.
That's awesome. So yeah, you kind of dug a little bit into Second Chance at Ranchito Lindo. I'd love to hear a little bit about the book and then also what readers can expect from the series and what inspired the series.
So Second Chance at Rancho Lindo features a Mexican American ranching family. There's 5 brothers, the parents, and then the grandmother, who all live on this ranch that has been in their family for generations, since the 1800s. And of the 5 brothers, the hero is the second oldest brother. His name's Gabe, and he's, out of all the brothers, he's the one who never wanted to be a rancher. And so when he's 18, he runs away to join the army.
As you do.
As you do. And he ends up getting wounded and having to retire his military career. So he comes back to Rancho Lindo, both to recuperate and also kind of decide, what's next for him. And so, of course, the family is expecting him to stay and take his rightful place, with his older brother, and take over running the ranch from their father, and along with his other brothers. But he's not so sure that that's what he wants to do. And meanwhile, Nora, who is the heroine, she also grew up on Rancho Lindo, but because her aunt and uncle worked on the ranch. And so she grew up with Gabe, and she always had this unrequited crush on him. But of course, she was invisible to him. But they have a falling out when they're younger, when Gabe leaves. So now Nora is back at the ranch, and she's the ranch's horticulturist. So she's in charge of doing all of the ranch, fruits and vegetables. And she's also built a greenhouse where she's selling the microgreens at the town's farmer market as, another branch of business for the ranch. So when Gabe comes back, she is still very wary of him and his intentions, even though she had these feelings for him when she was younger. And she kind of just makes it known to him that almost like she doesn't trust him, and that she just thinks that he's just going to disappear one day like he did when he was younger. And at first, Gabe is not, telling her she's wrong, because he actually, because he doesn't know what's going to happen. But as the book progresses, they start to build a friendship, and he starts to feel like maybe he wants to prove her wrong now. And he wants to show her and his family that he deserves to be on the ranch.
On the ranch there. Yeah, I love that. And I love, it's like we always talk about in book club, our favorite tropes. It comes up a lot. And I am a big sucker for a second chance. And so I love that the series is kicking off with the second chance for Gabe and for Nora. What do you love about a second chance?
I love the idea of getting it right a second time. Because usually, the couple are wiser, older, and they see maybe the mistakes that were made. And even though, they were never really in the book, it was more one-sided romance. Still Gabe has a lot to prove to Nora. And so I kind of like that, almost like a redemption trope as well, coming back and proving to himself and to his family that he's not the same, 18-year-old kid, And so I think that's what I love the most is there's a redemption part of it. And then also just getting a second chance to do things right.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, and you mentioned earlier that you also you've also published your first women's fiction, but you went under a different name, which is Annette Chavez Macias. Is that correct? I'd love for you to tell us about what inspires these stories, and how do your romances differ from your women's fiction?
So I decided Big Chicas Don't Cry was actually a very long process journey to get published and to get released. This was actually the first book that I ever tried to write when I decided I wanted to become an author. Okay. Because I had, this idea in my head, but as I mentioned before, I had no idea how to write a novel. And that's why I went to my friend to ask her advice. So along the way, even while I was writing romances, I still had this story. And I, every once in a while, would take out my laptop and I would work on it, and it would change. It's changed so much since when I first started to write it. And then finally, as I got more experience in writing, and also more experience in seeing the publishing industry, I knew that I needed an agent for this book. And I knew it was not going to be a romance. So I knew I needed to publish it under a different name, because I know, romance readers are very protective of the HEA, as they should be. Yeah. And I would never want to mislead readers who would follow me over from my romance to this women's fiction, expecting every character to get a happily ever after, when that was not going to be the case. Yeah. And so that was the reason I decided to publish under a different name. And it's definitely was a different, for me, for the romance, the main part of the story is, the couple or the main characters deciding or falling in love and deciding that they're going to stay together and it's going to work out. If you take the romance out of their story, there's no story there, right? Women's fiction, it's all about the main character's journey to self-discovery, learning to love themselves. And then for Big Chicas Don't Cry, there's actually, it's 4 main characters. It's about 4 cousins. And so each character has her own journey to go through. And some of those journeys involve a romance and some of them don't. But if you were to take the romance plots out of the story, there would still be a book. And so that was the main difference in writing the women's fiction.
When you say that this book was, the first one you tried to write, it's been the one that's sort of been knocking at your brain for so long. Tell us a little bit about the book and if we're going to expect more in that series, or if you're going to have more standalones.
So Big Chicas Don't Cry follows 4 Mexican-American cousins. It opens when they're teenagers and they're very, very close. Two of the 4 are actually sisters, but the 4 of them together have more like sister-like relationships. That's how close they are, even though they're cousins. And then when the book picks up in the next chapter, they're already adults. And one of the cousins is estranged from the other 3. And so the book follows them over the course of 1 year. And it's a story about each of them has their own, like I said, each of them has their own journey. And so sometimes that could be a romance relationship. Some of it is a family relationship. Others are, careers. But at the heart of the story, it's the 4 cousins' relationship with each other and coming back together and what that process is like. And also kind of, just remembering the lesson of being family and being there for each other through very hard times.
Oh, I love it.
And so this is, there's no sequel yet. I'm hoping there would be one day. But I do have a second women's fiction story coming out in March. And so it's a standalone. It's called Too Soon for Adios. And it's about a woman who meets her biological father on the day of her mother's funeral. And so she never knew he existed. And just because of her life circumstances, he offers her a house that's in this small town in New Mexico, where she lives in LA. So it's about her, discovering, the father that she never knew she had, and whether or not she is going to let him back into her life, and then also discovering her roots, because she never knew about this side of her family.
Well, so you just mentioned that that's what we can expect from you in March. Are there any other books that we should be expecting from you later this year?
Yeah, so the Rancho Lindo series will continue with book 2. It's called The Cowboy Whisperer, and that will be released at the end of this year, in November, end of November. And this will follow the third oldest brother, Tomas. And he, of the 5 brothers, he's the horse expert. He's the horse guru, horse whisperer. And his he's trying to help save the ranch by trying to bring in more business to the stables. And the heroine is a Mexican Olympic dressage rider who had a horrible fall and performance at her last Olympic qualifying event, and is now kind of trying to make a comeback. But because of all the media that was around it, she has to train quietly out of the public spotlight. And so they send her to Rancho Lindo to train. And this is more of enemies to lovers. I've been unofficially calling it, it's the cutting edge, but with horses.
I was thinking the exact thing. I was like, oh man, this is horses and cutting edge.
Yes. So I'm excited about that
skirter one. And yep. That sounds great. Yeah. Well, we have a few minutes to play what we love to call our fresh fiction facts section. These are just some random questions that are just very easy to answer. And then once we finish this, I'll turn this over to our readers to ask you some follow-up questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite genre to read?
Romance.
Awesome. What is one genre that you never want to read again?
Oh, that's so hard. I wouldn't say I would never read it again, but I don't usually pick up any type of fantasy or science fiction.
Okay, fair enough. What is your favorite time of day to write?
Late evening.
Okay. And what is your favorite time of day to read?
I don't know if I have a favorite time, but I think, I usually, I work a full-time job, so I don't get a lot of chance to to read during the day. So it would probably have to be at night as well.
It's like they're competing elements right there. Absolutely. Right. All right. Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Oh, the first book boyfriend, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but it has to be the boyfriend that was in the Sweet Valley High series. One of the twins boyfriend. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name, but I'm sure that was him.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I love that. What is your favorite writing fuel?
Oh, probably red licorice.
Interesting. I love that. Okay, are you a Red Vines fan or a Twizzlers fan?
Red Vines.
Red Vines. All right,
Yes.
Cool. Okay. What are some romances that inspire you?
I'm definitely inspired by other Latina romance authors. I think you mentioned before, it just seems like there's been more and more authors who have been having releases in the last couple of years. And it's just been that in itself is inspirational, just to see other romance authors who, whether they're Mexican American or Puerto Rican, Dominican, we still have that shared heritage. And so I think I I never knew when I was reading romance back when, when I was a preteen, reading my mom's romance books. I didn't realize, how much it would affect me to pick up a romance book and see Spanish in it, or to see, the food that I grew up eating. And so when these other Latina romance authors, when they send me their books to read, or I pick up their books to read, it's still like, it just means so much to me. So I'm definitely inspired by them.
I love that. Oh, me too. That's great. What is some advice that you would give to your younger self?
Oh, I would tell myself to be, to find other writers, or find a supportive writing community earlier, because I really do think just being surrounded by people who get you, who you can talk to about book stuff, and not just other authors, but even readers. My husband, he always says he's my biggest fan, but I'll tell him, can I tell you what happened today? And he's, in book world, and he's like, sure. But then at the same time, he doesn't get it. He doesn't know. So there's just something so fulfilling and nourishing about being able to talk books with other people. And you also get inspired by their successes, and it makes you want to be successful, and it inspires you to finish your book.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. With whom would you want to be stuck in an elevator?
Wow. I don't know if I would. I think I have a little bit of social anxiety, so I don't know if I would actually talk to anybody that I was stuck in an elevator with. Yeah. So
I love the honesty on that. That is so good. You're like, I would like to be stuck by myself. Would you want to be stuck by yourself in an elevator?
No, probably not, because I also have like claustrophobia. So no, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would just like to be stuck with anybody who, was fun and make me laugh, and, I could talk to about books.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. Do you write to music, or do you like it to be pretty silent?
Oh, no, I write to music. I try to actually create a playlist for every book that I write. And that way I listen to it while I'm writing, and then I listen to it when I'm not writing. Like if I'm driving in my car, or I'm at work, put my headphones in, and that's just when I'm in the middle of drafting a book, it just helps me think about the book and what I'm going to write later. So yeah, I can't write in silence. I need noise.
I love that. Do you like your music with words or without lyrics?
With lyrics.
With lyrics.
Yes.
Awesome. That's great. I love it. Yeah, that was my question. I was leading into it. I was like, do you have a playlist? But then you said, yes, you do. Perfect. So what are some songs that are on your current writing playlist?
So I have, because I just finished drafting the second Rancho Lindo book. So now I'm going to go into edits. So for that playlist, I do have a lot of Spanish songs. It's called, some of them are what they would call banda, which is, real fast paced, lively songs, with a few, romantic love songs thrown in there. But I've been enjoying the fast pace of it. It just puts me in, I don't know, it just puts me in a better mood, I guess, because it
inspires you. I love that.
Yeah. Dancing in my chair.
That's so cool. I love it so much. All right. Well, I want to make sure our readers have time to ask you some questions themselves. But before I turn it over to them, how can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you?
I am on Instagram as it's Sabrina _ the romance chica. And then I'm also on TikTok at the Romance Chica. And then my website is sabrinasol.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, Sabrina, thank you. Oh, excuse me. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to end our recording here, but our readers are going to stick around and ask you a couple more questions. Thank you so much.
Okay.